Good evening, South Africa and Zimbabwe. This is the second last day of our virtual Expo for 2021. Thank you all for joining us. We do have a few people that are in the waiting area still that I can see, so let's give them a little bit of time to sign in. Just for the start of this webinar, if you were here a couple months ago, you would have heard from this partner that we've got in the UK. It's an incredible opportunity to listen about the future, where education is. We've got Peter McLaughlin, who's the On-Campus Partnership and Progression Director at On-Campus. And we've got Jennifer Bridges, who you would have definitely spoken if you've been counseled by us. She's our regional manager and looks after us on a day-to-day basis. Jennifer's been really great to work with. And I think this webinar is going to give you a little bit more understanding of what it's like to go and study in the UK, but also what you need to be aware of as well. And for everybody listening, this will be recorded and shared to all the schools in South Africa and Zimbabwe, as well as on all of our social media channels. And again, please put your questions in the chat box or the Q&A section, and we'll get to it in a little bit. My name's George, and I look forward to helping you, and let's get your journey started. Yeah, Jennifer, the screen's yours.
You got a screen there, George?
All good, Peter. We can see you.
Okay, let me just flick it on. Good evening, everyone. My name is Peter McLaughlin. I'm Partnership and Progression Director for On-Campus CG, Cambridge Education Group. So it's greetings from London. Evening, wet and cold here at the moment, but I'm sure you're probably all basking in sunshine or cooler weather. So I've been asked to give a webinar talking about graduate employability trends and the future of work and industry in the 21st century. So as you all know, humankind has had a very difficult last couple of years, 18 months or more, with the healthcare pandemic, but also the impact that's had on all of our existence everywhere, and our way of doing things, our way of life, how we travel, how we communicate, how we buy and sell, how we continue with our education or jobs and occupation and professional career, activity that we do. So taking all that into account, I'm looking at where we are today globally, but also looking into that future, the trends that have been identified for areas of employment, education, industry, in wherever we are in the world. If I share with you, my background is I'm older than I look, is the field of international education. I've been, in my time, I've been a head teacher. I was a teacher when I left from Cambridge University, always embarked on that career to go into education, then made my way through to being a head teacher. Now I'm a director of education in this field of partnerships with our group of universities, UK, Europe, and US actually. So this is my talk today, and I'll try and keep it brief, although my record, George, just to share with you, is 120 minutes of lecture time, because I am a bit of an academic and I still teach. But I have to assure everyone, my students really enjoy what I have to say in the contribution to their knowledge and understanding. So actually, just to give a bit of background is that I represent a group of universities which we've been working with as educational partners for a good number of years. And as I said before, we have good background and good experience in quality education. We're part of Cambridge Education Group, which has a long record of success with thousands of students, if not tens of thousands of students, progressing on to the next stage of their education and their career at university, undergraduate and postgraduate. So this is just a quick snapshot of when I'm talking about I will only talk about some of these universities at the end to give you an idea of the quality of the research they're doing, of where I'm getting a lot of this information on in terms of future careers, future employability, and the trends and the opportunities that are available for students, international students here in the United Kingdom, Europe especially. So I've been asked to give a brief account of what one should do when researching universities for that next stage, if you are interested in studying abroad. I'm talking specifically for the United Kingdom, but at the same time, it applies to whether you're going for America, Australia, or Europe. So just a quick snapshot to put it into a context before I talk about the bigger picture is these are just aspects that's important for every student to consider when they're making that critical decision on the subject degree, the place of university to study, the destination, the country, the future, but also the future career development that comes with that. And it's important because the world has changed. We have seen significant shifts in the nature of the world we live in. And this has been in everything and everywhere. At the same time, we have to adapt to those changes. And this is why I've made these certain few points for you to reflect on, particularly starting with number one, yourself as an individual, in terms of your strong personal interests. Very important for students progressing at any age and stage. But if you're looking at university education, whether it's undergraduate or postgraduate, the main drivers, the main motivating aspects need to be considered very carefully, and that must come from your personal interests, your positive attitudes to study and work. Obviously, these are things that you probably know already and probably being reinforced by your teachers or your parents or family or friends or uncles and aunties and so on. But it's important to actually put it into a context because the skill sets now needed for this part of the 21st century moving forward is slightly different from when it was in their day, or even my day to some extent when I started teaching. And I do go back of quite a few, not centuries, but I go back quite a few decades, because I recall when I left Cambridge, I joined a team of educationalists and we were bringing in the first set of microcomputers into schools in North London and Hertfordshire. And at that time, it's quite exciting. And they're nothing more than the old-fashioned BBC micros that you see in museums and places like science museums now. But at the same time, the skill set then was very basic when it came to computer literacy, digital skills. And here we are today communicating on the machines, making it all happen as a hybrid way of our communication, having had a very disruptive 12 to 18 months or so. But skill sets is something I'm going to talk about particularly. The talents that you have, not always, number one, not always do we identify them. We know we may have a strength and a talent for something, but all positive aspects of talents. And that's important to realize. The fact that you're taking time to listen today, the fact that you have several languages, whether you're bilingual or trilingual, sometimes taken for granted. Same time, these are significant talents for an international graduate in the future with an international career in the future. Self-leadership and so on. I'm not going to get stuck in on my slides. I must be very careful because as I said, I can talk forever. But self-leadership is about self-development. And with everything we've just had and experienced at any stage and everywhere, we have to adapt to a changing environment because change is constant. And whether that's in relationships, family, communication, skills like this, education, making a move for studying abroad, new people, new groups, new communities, learning communities, all this we have to adapt. And we've been doing it already. You've been doing it already. And it's important that this is now the future of that need for adaptability. So having a clearer idea of one's professional goals and ambitions is so important because that's going to be a significant driver now. And the fact that we've lost probably a year or two in many of our areas of development at any age and stage, we have to catch up on that time. So this is something else I'm going to talk about in my slides. So reflection, very important. For those of you interested in cluing in now, whether you're a student or a counsellor or family, you may have already started in these obvious aspects of where to study, how to, what country, what location. But here I'm just flagging up some points, which I'll share this slide with the participants and colleagues, George. But looking at the location, the country obviously is important, the nation, whether it's an urban or rural setting and so on, whether it's a green campus. We've got some excellent green campuses as part of our education group, but we work with partners and affiliates. Is it on the coast? Is it going to be somewhere different from where you've been or where I've been here in North London, trapped for a while? Now it's buzzing like anything in these last few months. And what part of the country, whether you want to be in the north or the south, obviously there's often a difference, whatever nation you're looking at, whether it's UK, Italy or America, in my experience. Looking at the teaching quality, the impact of the research, so important now. So important that you look at the attributes and the reputation of that university or that school, that department, for the research impact, because the world has changed. We have to be looking at cutting edge. We have to learn from quite a number of mistakes that we've had before in whatever subject field and industry. We have to look at positive innovation and enterprise and moving forward and be inspired by academics, be inspired by those theorists in terms of the application into the real world, because the world is different, and I'll be talking on that. But again, looking at the university's quality of teaching and how it's regarded for entrepreneurial or enterprise or research, whatever subject field you might be interested in, whether it's business, engineering, medicine, so on. Compare, sorry, George, I must not get stuck on this, but all of you would have looked at the league tables, the QS world ranking. That's very important, because that's an important stepping stone for everyone's academic career and development, looking at maybe the top 200 or higher. But what I would like to advise is that you also look at a number of those league tables and don't just make a decision based on that number 5 or 10, because every student is different, every university is different, and looking at that, what if one would feel comfortable with all the other variables being taken into account as well. So we have one can get overwhelmed by this league table thing, but you take it into account, plus your other instincts in what you're looking for with some of the other research aspects that you're taking on board, which I strongly encourage you to do. One aspect that I will encourage for students who are interested in finance and accounting, and I know we receive a lot of applications and students coming through to do finance and accounting and business, is the FT Financial Times rankings. It often gets left out because you've got these more dominant media groups like Sunday Times, Times Newspaper, Guardian, and so on. But the FT is more precise in terms of the quality of the graduate employability and the ranking of that university business school in finance or business, whether that's Southampton, or for us it's Southampton and Henley, Reading Business School, and Queen Mary. Take that into account. And then the quality of those kite marks that you might see in those brochures or those websites, or asking experts like Global Education for that sort of guidance on making that comparison between this university and the others. But those kite marks, those brandings of, for example, the universities we work with, which are triple crowned accreditation, that means they meet the high standards of the industries themselves, not just university education and what goes on in teaching, but the quality of their graduates, the quality of that graduate employability, and the placements that they achieve, either for internships or placements for experience or employability. So there's just my snapshot there of looking at the importance of those kite marks for Triple Crown and some of the universities we work with, like Aston, Southampton, Henley, they have that. Again, it's telling you a lot about the quality of the experience that you will find. A few more short clips, really, tips would be, if you're looking at coming to do undergraduate study or postgraduate, do keep an open mind, if one can, of looking at a 4-year placement, because 1 year will bring that experience of taking a year out of working in industry or a professional placement or internship. It's not automatic in some universities. The ones we work with, it is, but that will improve your career prospects and experience, because it gives you an insight into the real world of employment, and some of those employment years out, as they will be employed. There is a low level salary, but it seems you can be paid for that experience. So I will be talking on that. Again, something to really consider. If you're looking at a 3-year major undergraduate, that's a 4-year, to be listed as a 4-year degree program, or if it's a 1-year master's you're looking at, it'll be a 2-year master's. And we work with a whole host of university partners that offer quality programs in these areas of year in industry or professional placement. You will get overwhelmed when you start looking at universities. Wherever they are, they will quote their graduate employability and their statistics and their graduate earnings when students qualify. Don't be overwhelmed by all that, because they often say the same thing, but you can research it a little bit more deeply just by extra few clicks to look at the career services and the graduates career service that they offer. And again, asking and researching with global graduate for their expertise and their impartial view on things, because that's quite important, because when universities receive awards for that quality, it isn't just given away, it's something that's highly achieved with a lot of hard work and quality and student satisfaction and student feedback. So take that into account when you're researching your universities in terms of their careers and employability, and the awards and the record of accolades that they receive, etc. Another significant fact with these somewhat uncertain times is many of our universities are being more generous now with scholarships to restore international mobility and applications from international sources into the universities. So scholarships is something that you should be researching into as well. And don't always go for the best deal or the cheaper university, because that does impact on the quality of the experience and the education you have, but also on the reputation and the employability when you do move on and apply for jobs in the future. So this is why it's important that you look at quality institutions that have a strong standing and position for employability when you're a graduate. So I'm going to talk a little bit more, trying to keep it short, on the trends in the future of work and industry. Much of this is common sense and you would know already, but your own national media, international media, your own government may have strategies and development looking at the next 10, 20, 30 years, having to adjust to the disruption that's happened in the last few years, and maybe even for the next year or more. So again, let's looking at those trends for employability. Where are the growth jobs, the employability, the industries that are due to expand, and to try and make an informed decision, having taken into account a lot of those variables. And again, most importantly, matching your talents and ambition and your skills portfolio to that, but with a view to improving that skills portfolio. And I'll tell you why and say more. So we're seeing now quite significantly the impact of the health pandemic on the economic growth and prosperity, setting back GDP for every nation throughout the world. Some countries a little bit more severely than others, some a little bit more steadier, but a whole review, a whole change happening now. So therefore, we are looking at aspects of growth industries and growth futures, which I highlight. But to be honest, sad to say, but the COVID-19 pandemic accelerated a lot of changes that were already taking place from the year 2000, if not before, with what I consider to be the fourth and fifth industrial revolution, which was happening anyway, which was in automation, digitisation of banking and finance, for example, automation of robots in machines and manufacturing. It was already happening, but this unfortunate experience of the 21st century pandemic has accelerated many other changes to which we've had to adapt to. No need for me to talk more, but we have to then take account of that and see what way forward to build up for the next part of this 21st century. And that means if you're researching future careers and jobs, you need to do it quite carefully, because even the traditional professions, whether that's medicine or education or banking and finance, you need to take on board that those occupations have changed more. Machines, electronics, digital, AI, all of them significantly impacting on every occupational practice that we have, and whatever area of profession or industry. But even now, more contemporary jobs being created that didn't exist 5-10 years ago, and now there's the proliferation of a need for those people with those skills, as I say more as I go through. So very important. Employment growth forecasts. The biggest surge has been in STEM: science, technology, education, mathematics, mathematical skills, and industries related to STEM. So we've seen this tremendous surge in the last few years particularly, and we have to thank the science and research that's been done on vaccines and everything. I know it's still going to have a more impact in many parts of the world, but that has stimulated a whole pharmaceutical and biomedical revolution pharmacy revolution. And with that also, communication, media revolution, fintech, finance technology revolution. I've been visiting China for about 15 years, and I was there last 2 years ago. I won't say what city, but it's the city where it all started. Now I looked at my itinerary a while ago. It was already China was a cashless society, and now UK, when I came back halfway there, now it's accelerated. I would say UK is a cashless society. So significant impact there on the transfer of monies and funds and things like that. Even for us as consumers, it's quite interesting how this has changed. So the impact of AI, computing, all this is digitization of technology and industry. So these are the little snapshot of those subject areas. And I'm sorry I haven't to speed through this quite quickly, but us alone, we're all working differently. We're communicating differently through media and creative media, social platforms. Wasn't the case maybe 2 years ago. We are now pretty confident when it comes, and although we all have different skill set, but when it comes to Zoom or social media platforms, whatever, this is now a hybrid form of ways of communicating, educating, teaching, doing business. And to be honest, whatever industry, whether you're an architect or an engineer, you were doing it anyway, but this is now accelerated so that we can connect with many people in communities around the world, even across the road, if that's the case, if we're not allowed out with curfews, etc., etc. So again, just a snapshot to say, research things very carefully, looking at the quality of the university's research itself and its impact into what we call research impact, REF, and the expertise that's found with the universities working with local industry, regional or national industries, and then all that is found, and you then have a much more clearer picture and an informed view. But again, as I say, looking for impartial advice and guidance from global education or people in the expert field, so important to do that. Your school counsellors, your people engaged with your future. So quick snapshot again, what are the skills often required? This is taken from authoritative sources. It's not just me talking, but if we look at the World Economic Forum, everything that's stimulated every year when all the world leaders and economic advisors and representatives meet in Davos in Switzerland, and they have this World Economic Forum, and it's been a pretty grim time. Obviously, the last few years it's been held virtually, but this is the advice that they're making in terms of what's going to be required now in the field of education and international education. So the skill sets are pretty obvious to some extent, as we've been talking about adaptability, but there are others of the ability to work in teams, to work with others, to work collaboratively, to be creative, not to have fixed ways of doing things. Most significantly, I'm afraid, is the willingness to work with machines. Sorry, that's my way of putting it, and I don't mean Arnold Schwarzenegger in Terminator or whatever, but who knows, but to work with digital and computers and be open to that with all the changes that are rapidly taking place even in that field of digital literacy. So it's that adaptability to accept challenge, particularly, and to emphasize. It's difficult when you've been working remotely. We've all been working remotely, and we're having to return to a more new form of normality in our own behaviors and the way we live and communicate with people, but move around the city, whatever. So again, adapting to those challenges. So those are the sort of soft skills to some extent. The harder skills is quite significant to think no, and I'm talking with my experience of interviews and talking with associate professors or professors in the field of engineering or finance with our university partners, and there is a harder language or harder skills of teaching in the subject area, whether it's business or finance, but to have an insight and knowledge of blockchain, to have a knowledge of cloud computing. And although these are words we use, it's already there, and we're using those systems already as we're moving away from the slower pace of the speed of the internet, which is in everything and everywhere, but from our own machines to our own storing data and using the PEG and all this sort of stuff and storing on your computer or hard drive. It's all in the cloud. And this is so important because that's how the world is moving at the moment, whether it's cashless transactions or whether it's communication or supply chain. You only have to read the newspapers of what's happening in the UK at the moment with our supply chain not so good at the moment. Well, that was triggered by a decision to leave Europe. My view, we can't just blame the lorry drivers. But anyway, I mustn't digress. A willingness to be analytical in whatever subject area, whether you're a social scientist, an engineer, a media performer, to actually reflect reasonably on things, because this is all tied up with the softer skills, or what I call EI, emotional intelligence and empathy with everything. Strong interest in AI, of all those fantastic developments, but not just to let things set as they are, because artificial intelligence is now into everything, in every product and every gadget, not just our mobile phones, but also our light fittings or our heating or the electric cars or the petrol stations that aren't operating at the moment. So here in UK. So it's apps after apps, and I know one can get overwhelmed and become addicted, but you have to be reasonable and control with all that and keep an open eye, because these are the startups, the jobs, the innovations of the future. And this is why it's important to have that mindset and willingness to have an interest in those skills, those hard skills, or even to study them at degree level. Because you can now, a lot of this you can study without having to do postgraduate. You can accelerate into an undergraduate degree with a lot of this. And so, again, marketing has changed. The whole dimension of digital marketing and its impact now, far more effective than TV or radio or films, etc. But now we have TikTok, we have Instagram, all these instantaneous messaging, subtle forms of marketing and advertising as well, which we're being influenced by. Computing skills always will need improvement. I've had to make a big shift in 18 months. Didn't have many Zoom calls up until now. We are all pretty proficient in that, and it's going to get even more challenging as new systems, new machines, new apps and technologies are developed all the time, as we have them on our wrist, or even as I was described with the mobile phone. And I remember having mobile phones when they were the size of a brick. And in fact, the chips that we have in these Apples and these phones that we have today, much more powerful than the chips that we use in the NASA program for landings on the moon or Apollo or whatever, even in just one mobile phone, and so on. So aim high, yes. Think hard about the future, and do ask the experts. And you've got supportive groups in your schools or your colleges with your educational counsellors and your agencies. Engage responsibly in all things. I'm telling you things that you probably know already, but develop that positive mindset, because the 21st century is going to require that as a constant, because change is constant. And that skills portfolio, never say too much or it's never too late to learn, or this is too much for me to do. You have to adapt to that skill set, and it's that theory of 1,000 hours or 10,000 hours to develop that skill set of taking on new challenges and skills and becoming more proficient in them. Briefly now, a snapshot of the universities that we work with as part of ONCAMPUS. I've been a former centre director of ONCAMPUS London, which is a fantastic learning community which works closely with all the University of London colleges for progression of international students from our foundation or our pathway programs, undergraduate and postgraduate, onto pretty prestigious degrees there. We also have Aston, which is in the top 30 in the UK. Do check on the website, do find out more. It's outstanding in the sense that it's well known for enterprise and entrepreneurial in every subject, not just for business and new business startup. It's in every field: engineering, sciences, life sciences. It's a great community to research. On Campus Reading, I work closely with them. I'm working now very closely with Henley Business School, which excels in finance and financial technology investment. It's one of the top business schools for training if you're interested in going into finance and trading and dealing, stock exchange activity. It's even got its own centre that is a simulation of that, of what it's like in London City or in Wall Street. It's a fascinating, great university to study with. And then we have ONCAMPUS UK North, strong reputation for progression students in STEM, medicine, pharmacy, nursing, healthcare, tremendous reputation and success with all its students if they work hard and obviously put in greater effort for progression, but tremendous opportunities there for progressing on to medical sciences, becoming a doctor, a nurse, or a pharmacist, or biomedicine. Then we have Sunderland in the northeast, great place to study, excels in media and film, excels in sports and activities, and again, a little bit further away up in the northeast, but that brings with a good cost and value of things, moving away from London, which is one of the world's global cities, quite expensive. But Sunderland, and then we have Hull with its excellent provision for engineering, and with a very strong placement scheme with its students in large corporations like PP, British Petroleum, with its expertise in engineering, and then petroleum, and then civil engineering as well. And then very popular centre we have on campus London South Bank, south of the River Thames, excels in many different subject areas as well. And then significantly, we're very proud, and new partners joined us with the confidence in the quality of what we do, working with international students progressing on to University of Southampton, which is in the world top 100. It's the founding member of Russell Group. For those of you not sure what I mean by Russell Group is an elite group of universities, only about 35 of them or so, that work together in terms of research and attraction of funding and sharing, transfer of knowledge and research outcomes. So quite important now with the changes that are taking place, that you have that connectivity between the academics and the experts at cutting edge. And again, it's in the top UK University League. I could mention, but I don't have enough time. Sorry, George, maybe another call, but we work very closely with one of the world's top universities in Europe, University of Amsterdam, which is excellent with all its reputation. It's in the Netherlands, different country altogether, I know, but this just shows you the quality of what on campus and Cambridge Education does with having the trust and confidence working with these partner universities that excel, and we're part of that learning provision and opportunity. And then on campus Lund in Sweden, maybe a long way from South Africa or Zimbabwe, but I have to put it to you, the Scandinavian countries are so fascinating. I've got my eldest son, he's in Norway. It's a completely different lifestyle altogether. Yes, it's much colder and all that, yes, but at the same time, the Scandinavian lifestyle is so different from here as it is here in the UK. But the reputation of Lund, it's a triple accredited university for its business school. It's pioneering in sustainability in every subject area, in every field of industry, every field of education, and it excels in its reputation as one of the in the top 100 in the QS rankings in the world, same as Southampton, same as Amsterdam, same as many of the universities we work with. I'll speed through this, George. This is just a snapshot for your counsellors if they have interest of what different pathway programs that we offer. And we have quite a number of pathways which we've been running more than a decade or more, and those are listed there for you. So if you have interest in art and design, these are the range of options we provide for students to study in these leading centres. We have pathway in business, economics, finance and management. We call these UFPs or IFPs. That's common language between all our universities. I was saying to you earlier is that I've had students from South Africa who have excelled in the subject area of business and economics and finance, done extremely well as graduates, working now internationally. Engineers as well from into Southampton. I can remember David doing very well, who studied on UFP engineering, and now he's excelling in his subject field. You've got humanities, social sciences, then this particular growth area of life sciences, quite significant, the biomedical surge in all occupations, and many of our universities are world leading in this. So they've been very attractive this year and last year into these subject areas because of the link with the pharmaceutical and research that many of our universities have with that in terms of pharmaceutical and biomedical industry. So tremendous opportunities there and a big surge of employability too. And then we have our specialist programs for medicine at UK North and also at Aston University if you have an ambition for training to be a doctor. It's a long training, I have to put. It's a little bit shorter than it is in the US and other places, but we have very high level of success and progression of our students onto MBBS medicine with UK and also Ireland, Irish universities and European universities. Some of the others I've differentiated there because we've had interest on campus London from South Africa, Southern Africa, students who've come to study on the University of London International Foundation because on campus London is approved by University of London itself as a university teaching centre. So again, specialist subjects there on offer with options of also applying to LSE, London School of Economics, and King's College is a very popular destination as well for students on the IFP, but also on our UFP if you have the strong interest with London University. Then we have an IY1, which is another way of accelerating, making the jump onto the first year of university, but maybe you don't have all the right entry requirements for direct entry or qualifications or English. So again, we have IY1 as a way of jumping straight on to a level 4 program, which is the first year of degree, which is equal to the first year of degree program in a 3-year major at university. But getting that English qualification or whatever you need, that cultural adaptation maybe to the way that Western education delivers with critical thinking and things like that. So that's the IY1, which again, global education can give you advice and guidance on our different centres. So you have, yes, London and UK North are seen as one-to-many, so you can study there, and then you can apply to any university you so wish through the UCAS scheme that's operated at those 2 centres, whether you're applying for finance or whether you're applying for business or engineering, but for UK North, they're the specialists in STEM, particularly in science and medicine. So again, options available with what we call the one-to-many. If you're looking for a more guaranteed, definite situation where you've decided on Southampton, you've decided that you want to study there at degree level, then our on-campus Southampton Learning Centre will help and assist in that progression onto those degree courses in a guaranteed arrangement, as long as one meets the entry requirements onto University of Southampton. Long list of university partners we have there. If it is that you are a bit concerned, you want a more definite, even more definite arrangement with the visa, then again, we have that ICAS arrangement with quite a number of our university partners that assists you to study in the UK, and there's no back and forth every year or so for different visas, and you can get a rolling visa for 4 years if it's undergraduate, 3 or 4 years, and same with masters, but that's with a select list of our on-campus guaranteed partners and affiliates. Quick snapshot, colourful slide. I'm going to send these on to you, George, for your counsellors and advice, but very important is we're so excited with On-Campus Southampton being launched, working with University of Southampton, excellent university, captures a lot of sunshine. It's on the south coast, it's down on the southern coast on the Isle of Wight. It's certainly worth Google mapping it and having a look-see, and it's a great place to study in its subject areas and its location. Quite a number of my own family, my youngest daughter studied with University of Southampton. She was doing art and design at the Winchester campus, which is very close by, and did brilliantly. And now she's running her own business. She's still quite young in interior design and doesn't need to rely on dad so much, which is pretty good with the opportunity now. So again, Southampton, Russell Group, top 15, top 100 UK world university. Aston, brilliant place. Birmingham, second largest city outside London, thriving community. And I've been running alongside, rubbing shoulders with some of their professors and their associate professors in subject areas, all different subject areas, interestingly. And they're all speaking with great energy, all with great enthusiasm and inspirational in terms of encouraging students to have that skill set to be the best that they can be, but also to be enterprising and entrepreneurial in whatever subject field or area of research that they're looking for, or employability. And that is a tremendous innovating motivation for students. And it's also got a strong reputation for assisting SME businesses to transform and to adapt to this part of the 21st century. So they have a reputation for entrepreneurial enterprise, tremendous placement scheme, all found within the Midlands, so that's not just confined to that area, with new businesses, new startups, a tremendous surge of sense of mission and purpose to assist those graduates who are studying with Aston University, Birmingham, but coming from on campus Aston itself. Tremendous. And the staff I met all speak with the same sense of commitment and mission, which is great to see. Henley Business School, I'm working very closely with them. The reason for that is because of their triple accreditation, and we've just launched a new program, the UFP Business and Finance program, which is for students wanting to come to the UK to study with us in January. Why I highlight Henley, which is one of the world's class business schools for finance. So it has an excellent reputation in the whole industry of the financial markets. Picture there is of the ICMA Centre, the International Capital Markets Association, and they do training for people in the profession, for those who work in the stock exchange and trading in stocks and shares and investment, even for the graduates and the professionals themselves. But obviously they have a great place here for the undergraduate and postgraduate students wanting to study in that area. And they have tremendous industry connections with those global corporate companies for management, accounting, KPMG, Goldman Sachs, etc., etc. So again, research deeply into that if you have an interest in finance and investment, and also fintech. And just a quick snapshot of the ICMA Centre, which is a tremendous surge of energy. Everything's on the website for everything I've said on those universities and our own CG on campus website. And you can sense the energy and the enthusiasm when you see the video of the students in the simulation trading rooms, and it just looks like the real thing, actually. And that's very important for decision making and the speed and pace that you have to operate if you're going to be going into that particular employment in that area of finance and stock market and trading and so on. So ICMA Centre has the highest standard in Europe. It's got the most machines as well than any other university in Europe and UK. And its specialism is teaching in the financial markets, and it's got a leading reputation for consultancy and research. So you're getting it top end with the MBA and the postgraduate, undergraduate students studying on that, thriving as well with that confidence and knowledge and insight. This was the centre where I was director for quite a number of years, last year, year before, and this is the progression of On Campus London. If you haven't made a decision that you'd like to go to Southampton or Henley or Aston or Sunderland, whatever it might be, this is the centre which gives you a good 3 terms or so to decide on what you want to do and where you want to go next. And it gives you the whole option of all our university partners, but also looking at other universities that might be of interest to you, like King's College. Although we have a strong clustering of all the University of London colleges with On Campus London, which where I've been today through Bloomsbury, right next to UCL and SOAS, thriving. They had their induction week. Thousands of students here and keen to get started on the next on this academic year. Such a great thing to see compared to September a year ago when those streets of London were empty, I'm afraid. But no, great thing to see. So these are one-to-many, and you work with the counsellors and the teachers there, and you would be applying through UCAS, where you can make 5 university choices, and you can have a whole spectrum of options and choices. And our programs are highly regarded and valued by many other UK universities, not just our partner universities or affiliate universities that want to work more closely with us. Talking about graduate skill sets, I'm not saying everyone must train to be a biomedical engineer, George, but I strongly encourage students who are going into any subject field, I'm coming to the end now, but any subject field, is to have an interest in as one would, in what's been happening in the field of biomedicine. And we can't stop that with the concerns, whether it's over the COVID or the vaccine, and should we or should we not. I'm sorry, the world has changed, and we have to now take stock of what's happened. And biomedical development and the revolution is going to impact on all aspects of our lives and our health, whether it's cancer or other forms of illness, etc. Because this tremendous outcome of success, we've still got a long way to go, I know, with the vaccination and elimination of COVID, etc. And it's going to take quite a while. But this is where the expertise and the science and discovery has been tremendous. And that will impact into these STEM subjects. But what I'd also say, if anyone's interested, or counsellors, if you have students wanting to go into business or finance, make friends with biomedical scientists when you're at university, and go to a university that has an innovation or a pioneering department, cutting edge department for science and engineering, because students in finance or business or marketing, this will be the industries, these are the industries of today and tomorrow. So I would say, you know, love sciences, love technology, even if you're an artist or a designer. As I said, my youngest daughter, she's focusing on interior design, but at the same time, you know, she's taking on board everything that's happening with AI systems in the home, and the production of everything that she's doing, etc. And that style and imagery, and minimalism, that's so important. So growth forecast, yes, in biotech, pharmacy, healthcare, and whether that's whatever subject field, have that interest, because those are this is quite a significant industry in the future. And with on campus Aston, I'm highlighted just a quick snapshot there. You've got a year in industry, which is part of a 4-year major, work of 4 years for your 3-year degree. And that gives you even greater insight and contributes significantly to your career CV and your employability, because you've got a year of interest, engagement actively in an applied way, which makes you attractive to employers and in that subject area. Again, engineering found in all our subject fields of partners, and I've just highlighted a few things. There we are. With that was a former seminar that you held, I think. And we have the course finder search, which is accessible for everyone. I know many of our partners and affiliates, they find this very helpful. If you're unsure of the subject, it will open up a whole host of more information for you to make a more informed decision. Okay. So it filters out everything, and it works extremely well, just contributing to that a pool of knowledge and insight that you need before you make that fully informed decision on that next step, important stage of the next decision for studying abroad and the degree and the careers. Okay, so I'm sorry it's getting dark now. It's a little bit more night time here, but I tried to keep it as concise as possible, George. I hope that was helpful to those participants. I'm happy to field any questions now, if you have any, or to put it as an email, and then I'll come back to you with more information to assist. Or Jenny is there as well to field any particular questions, whether that's to do with visas, scholarships, and the like. Yeah.
Peter, I think it's just, we're really lucky to have you presenting. I think you articulated it, the various pathways, the various things to look for in applying, and the tips that you gave to students. I can't stress them enough. From somebody that struggled to choose what I wanted to study when I was looking at studying many years ago now, that's the one thing I wish I spent more time doing, was really researching where things were going at the time. Yeah, it resonates so well with me. Did you where did you feel your change in approaching students came from? Did you feel it was more about the uncertainties with COVID now that's more this tech coming through, or was it like your own feeling with your own lecturers? Like, did you feel it more from the external environment, or you just seeing
that's a very interesting, very good question, George. Very good. To some extent, Yes, it's through the experiences that I've had. Even when I left university, if I share with you, for me it was easy. I always wanted to be a teacher, and then I got involved with the new range of introduction of computing into schools, and I made a big jump quickly. But where we are now, I suppose it's through the eyes of the young people who I've been working with always, constantly. Also, my own children. With the decisions, because the COVID did impact on their lives and their livelihoods, and they've had to adjust and change profession to some extent. Yeah, so it's really, the COVID has stimulated a lot of change in every aspect, and I think one has to deal with change constantly. And obviously, over the years, I've seen a lot of change myself. But you always have to have a positive mindset and adapt. But also, most importantly, is to look into where the expertise and the research and the thinking is. And I'm not saying we all have to be academic scholars, but I find just reading around the subjects is so important. And I'm a very generalist in everything, and that's quite important. But then the specialism, even with that, you have to be adaptable, because, you know, as I said, the BBC micros we're working with did nothing more than tic-tac-toe and table tennis, and we thought that was the future, yeah? And then you had Bill Gates working on the other side of America, and unfortunately, you know, he created Microsoft, so everything accelerated. So those stupid machines, BBC micros, are redundant, yeah? And then we moved on to Amstrad, and they were a load of rubbish. Now, look at what we have. It's fantastic. But it's taken, you know, a good 20, 30 years. And what's so exciting that I find is, what will the next 20, 30 years be like? I might not be here to see it all, don't worry. But at the same time, you know, we have to always constantly keep aware of those developments and take them on board, and don't be fearful of them or frightened of them, but say, I've got to embrace them. If this is going to be part of my portfolio in the future, then I have to adapt with a passion for that. And that's probably the most important denominator in everything, is that passion for what you want to do, and that is driven by your talents, but then developing new talents and new skills. It's so important. So yeah, but I don't know if that answers your question, George, but I mean, I think in a roundabout way, you know, the world has changed, and the transformation that's happened, we have to transform to adapt, but also be aware that even more changes are going to be taking place. And that's the little bit of the uncertainty, but powering forward with a passion, energy, drive, enthusiasm, adaptability, all things are possible. All things will be possible.
When students get to on campus, and a lot of the questions that we get when we're counseling, especially high school students and their parents, and especially in our market in South Africa and Zimbabwe, where it is a family decision to go and study overseas, you know, the risk, the cost, and all of that. A lot of the questions we get are in terms of the support that students get. Could you go a bit into what those types of services look like at all the other on-campus centres? And do they actually carry on after they leave the centres? Or, you know, we know the universities will carry on, but what happens with the centres?
I mean, Jenny, you could contribute, because you're very close to one of our leading centres. I'm pretty London centric, and I'm always aware, sorry, I'm still in London, I'm always aware that it's not the centre of the universe, despite what Boris Johnson might think and everything else, you know. Jenny, you field that question, and I'll chip in. Yeah.
Sorry about that. So are you asking what happens when students choose to?
So once students are on board and they're arriving at the pathway centres, a lot of the questions that we've been getting are, what are the types of supports that students get? Therapists, counselling, and I know COVID has kind of really pushed this to the forefront with current students that have gone through it. But I think the next generation students are starting to ask, what are the supports that they're going to get? We can get a little bit more on that.
So on campus, we'll give students quite a lot of support, actually, and it's students benefit not just from the support of on campus, but also from the support of the university. So when students study with us, they'll study at a small on-campus centre on the university campus, and they'll have an advisor who they'll work with on a regular basis, and that person is responsible for their academic progress, but also there to make sure that they're very, happy and healthy. And they will also have, full access to other student support at the centre. In addition to that, students are able to use the university facilities and access student services and student union at the university. So it's a full kind of process of ensuring that students are ready to progress to the university. They have all of the support that they need while they're doing their foundation programme, and they're engaging with the ONCAMPUS Centre and the university. In addition to that, I found a very good example of what some of our universities do, partner universities do, is I visited Aston earlier this week. And actually, every student that studies at Aston, so whether that's a student who is joining the foundation programme at OnCampus, or International Year 1 or pre-masters, or a student who has direct entry to the university, will receive an email before they arrive, and they'll be invited to request a mentor who'll be there to support them when they arrive in the UK, give them advice and help to settle into the UK. So there's actually quite a lot of support for students, both academically and also in terms of well-being. You did ask the question about COVID, and I suppose around health and how that works. So all students will be given advice and support with registering with the GP, a general practitioner, when they arrive in the UK. Students can then make an appointment to have a COVID vaccine should they wish. So there's no requirement, but we find that most students are taking up on that offer. And that's completely free and available to all students. Both UK.
That's everywhere, Jenny. As I said earlier, in London, I went through central London, and the students were there all around Bloomsbury, outside the pharmacies and the health centres. So yeah, it's free. Free vaccine with the being available for students. One thing I always mention is that with the universities, it's more with on campus and the way we do things, it's more of a personal experience. So we put a lot of emphasis on personalisation and knowing every individual student, and then obviously giving them time not just for academic teaching and learning. For me, the library is always important. Sorry guys, I'm old-fashioned. Yes, I remember being locked in Cambridge Library overnight once, so that's another story. But the library, research facilities, but also the skills required and supporting essay writing, personal development, societies, activities. All that is important in terms of holistic development for our students, and we take that and take great pride in focusing on the individual. But being there also, if it's in case of a serious situation where we have emergency phone calls, all that sort of stuff. So yeah, we pride ourselves in the quality of our attention to the needs of our students, and progression onto the university is pretty smooth as well, because we're on campus. We're on the same campus as that university. We're there. A lot of the alumni keep in touch with me at Reading or at different centres, and they are the mentors too. They are quite happy to talk to students having come from South Africa themselves. They understand the cultural transition and the change, or whether that's China or Russia, whatever. Yep. So that's again a sense of community and support, a network.
And Peter, yourself as a lecturer, how have you found the model of teaching more virtually now, that mixture? Have you accepted it as something that you enjoy now, or is it still quite in that teething stage?
I think I'm pretty experienced. It's gone beyond teething, yes, definitely. Now I've got a much more better command on whether that's Zoom or Microsoft Teams, etc. What I do encourage though is when I give a talk, is for students to come on video, so that it's all very well just to switch it on or switch off and then do something else. And I know we're all busy in our day and everything else, but it's different. But it's a hybrid version of what we have. Many of these students I saw today, quite exciting, face-to-face, going into lectures with the induction they have there at University of London, but they will also get remote learning for some of their lectures or their videos. As I said earlier, George, it was already happening, but it's now accelerated. So yeah. But yes, normally I have been told that there should be a clock when Peter's on Zoom calls or talking, and it cuts me out after 20 minutes or 40 minutes, whatever. I have been asked to give a talk in 7 minutes. I'm sorry, I passed that one. It's just impossible for me. But we adapt, and it's important though for students to realize learning is that, you know, you have to have a way for to have lectures, to have seminars. All this will happen in a hybrid way, but at the same time, the whole world of work and industries have changed. Even before COVID, if you were working for KPMG or a banking system or an engineering company, you would be traveling constantly with what you do if you're an international graduate. And this would have been the main way of communication and working with a more slower system of Zoom or whatever it was at that time. So, and it's the future as well. So we have to have that skill set and that willingness to be on the move, but at the same time pushing ahead and communicating with people all over the world. The world is now, to some extent, a much smaller place when it comes to communication and media than what it was before. And that's the exciting thing with international education and international careers that we are encouraging our students to develop in their own professional field. So, yeah. But maybe don't ask me to do certain things on technology. That would be unfair. As I said, my skill set started on BBC Micros and table tennis program. Just don't ask me to program the stuff. I leave that to others. But this is a great success of where we are today, and it's going to get even faster and more efficient. You know, so be ready for greater changes. That's the exciting thing about the future, isn't it?
Absolutely, absolutely. To any students who are listening in, if you'd like to send in through any questions, please do. I know I've received a whole bunch here on my phone that we will get through to Jennifer and Peter to answer as well. But anything that's related to this presentation, please put it through. Love to see Peter keep talking for another half an hour and keep me and Jennifer awake over here as well. So yeah.
What questions do you have there, George? Do you have any questions particular?
A couple questions about psychology keeps coming up.
Yeah, interesting.
With psychology, if you want to go into that one.
Yep, happy to do so. This is this with a view to clinical psychology or psychological sciences, or is it sort of counselling and development?
This question was quite broad in general, just in terms of psychology. So I've gone back asking if there's a special field. So maybe just a top-down info on psychology would probably be great.
Well, Jenny, I would be correct, is that all our partner universities have psychology or social psychology. They have expertise. What I find with my experience, though, where I was working with 6 or 7 of the University of London colleges, King's, Queen's and like, is that if you're pursuing a career in clinical psychology, it's going to be more of a Bachelor of Science or Masters of Science, and that means you have to have a STEM-related background to have an understanding, at least maybe in chemistry or biology. I'm afraid number is important in everything these days, so that we know what patterns and behaviors are. So we look at statistics, we look at maybe mathematics, and even the top selecting psychological departments will be looking at that background of an applicant. But it doesn't mean that you're negated if you don't have a love for chemistry and biology, because you can acquire and study that. But the reason for that, I think, is because the human body and the brain is made up of chemicals. This is what we are. I mean, we're all, I know water is the main constituent. At the same time, you know, hormones, development, different stages of life, whether it's babyhood, childhood, all the way through to old age. It's all lifespan development, isn't it? And that's a lot of it is, sorry, with the aging process, yes, but as he says, but that's a lot of it is stimulated by your chemistry and the biology of the body, etc. So but understanding of people and behavior, that's important. So with psychology, you've got consumer psychology, you've got social sciences, you've got so many different aspects. You can specialize in special needs, special education. That is again an area of education and psychology, you know. So all our partners offer that field, but it might need a little bit more definition as to what type of psychology and what psychologist you would want to be, because that affects your first degree, I would say. Yeah.
Jeff, in terms of grades, like what grade should matric and in South Africa and A-level students in Zimbabwe or even in South Africa be looking at? Where should their grades kind of be, very generally, if you don't mind us getting into that?
Jenny?
Yeah, so Of course, some A-level and matric students may not always need our programs. So really, if students have done exceptionally well, in most cases with A-level or matric, they will get direct entry. If students don't meet the entry requirements, then we're here to help. So that's where we come in. And it really sort of varies depending on which program a student is going to take. So for instance, I mean, if a student's looking at a medical foundation from a South African student, for instance, if they're looking for the medical foundation, they're going to need about an average of 70 or 80%. It would be the same in chemistry and bio. But then, you know, for some of the other foundation programs, we can accept students with much lower grades, so grade 3 or better in 5 subjects. So it really depends. And then if students have done slightly better, they would be able to, but not quite well enough to get direct entry to university. Then in some instances, they can do something called an international year 1, which Peter spoke about earlier. So that is a year 1 program leading into year 2, rather than a 1-year pre-program leading into year 1 of a degree. So really it varies quite a bit, but it's always worth students considering if they haven't got the grades that they need for direct entry, that pathway programs are there to assist them, give them the skills that they need. And in some instances, we have had students who've joined an international year 1 program who would perhaps meet the entry requirements for direct entry to a university, but choose the international year 1 because of the flexible start dates. So for instance, we have 2 start dates per year for international year 1, so September and January. And other students may choose an international, even if they've met the entry requirements for direct entry, may choose an international year 1 because they want a little bit of extra support, more hours in the classroom for the first year of their undergraduate degree, more support, more contact with their advisor.
Yeah, the reason I asked that question was exactly for how you've just spoken now, you know, something that I think a lot more Southern Africans need to be aware of is that with the stresses of writing exams with this pandemic, you know, the stresses that have come through it as well, that there is support and there are these pathway programs that are there as well. A lot of the questions we've gotten for this webinar were where should they start? And you know, Peter's really eloquently said that, you know, where's the best place to start and finding your passions and looking at the future and where you want to work. And then, you know, what you've just said now about the grades, knowing that there's that support there. And I'm not telling any parents that complacency here is the way to go, definitely not. But absolutely, knowing that there's support, I think we'll have that ease, and we all need to think of it as a family. You know, getting a degree now is not just, you know, an investment, it's also a family decision in our parts of the world. So thank you both very, very much. To everybody listening in, I put my contact details on the screen here. The QR code will lead directly to us. We will be sharing all these links that Peter and Jennifer have shared with us, as well as the presentation. So please do reach out to us. Peter, Jennifer, if you've got any last words, I know I want to keep this before 9 o'clock. I think last time we went just past 9. So I'd like to have any last words from the two of you, if you don't mind, and any recommendations.
Yeah, I would just like to add one thing. So just so that you're aware, if you're watching this now, please do contact Global Education rather than the email address at the end of our presentation. If you'd like to speak to me, we can set up an appointment, and that's the best way to contact me to make sure that actually the message comes to me. And yeah, we look forward to speaking to you anytime that you like. Although we're here for this 1 hour presentation or one and a quarter hour presentation today, we're actually always here to support you and global education, and we'd really love to have individual conversations or give you any other advice that you need. Thank you for attending. Oops, you're on mute, Peter.
We had to have one tech issue. All good.
Yeah, not perfect, but that's being human, isn't it? So we're all not perfect in my view anyway. So sorry about that technological glitch. Thank you, George. Thanks again for the invitation. I've enjoyed this session. We've had strong messaging going on and interest, and it's very important. Do I have anything to say to students? It's probably the same thing I've been saying for a good number of decades when I started teaching in schools and then colleges, then universities, and then becoming a head teacher, and now where I am, is be the best that you can be. But identify those talents and those strengths and be willing to learn new skills, new talents, and forever keep prospering and thriving by being the best that you can be. And then really press on. Sorry, that's a very Churchillian type statement, I know, and he said it in a different way, but I would say press on, because this is what the next 21st century requires, and we have to embrace that and determination and give that energy to that. And a lot of things have to be decided upon, but please make them an informed decision. Just do not go on hearsay or what someone else is doing. Inform, work with experts. And George, delightful to talk to you again. You are an expert in that different part of the Southern Hemisphere, which I have to add, where I was born, actually. So there's a denominator here in Subiaco, Fremantle. I filled it in on my passport application visa today to go to another country shortly for an education fair and a conference. So interesting synergy here, but press on. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Brilliant. Thank you, everybody. And we hope to see you all at our next Expo in South Africa, hopefully in person. And if not, we will have this conversation again. So thank you guys very much.
Wow. Thank you. Have a good evening. Bye.